Well, hi there, everybody. How's everyone doing this evening? And we're now heading out of Easter Sunday into early Monday morning across the eastern half of the country. It's been a rough day for many of you in terms of severe weather. We've had numerous tornado reports, lots of wind damage, and unfortunately, a loss of life, several lives lost in areas of Mississippi. So thoughts and prayers go out to those folks. But we've still got dangerous storms that we're tracking here on Severe Weather Now, and we're going to get to it. So my name is Matt. I'm a meteorologist here for Severe Weather Now. If you are new to us, which many of you are because we just started this week, our goal is to provide severe weather for information for you without a lot of hype. There's so much hype around weather just to get clicks. I don't care about clicks or anything like that. I care about keeping you safe. We've got a team of meteorologists that can help support this, and our goal is just to keep you ahead of these storms and during storms like we're dealing with tonight to keep you up to date on the latest so you are informed. So if you wouldn't mind subscribing or commenting below something you'd like to see, we'd be happy to certainly get to that. So let's get to the radar right now. We are dealing with some tornado warnings still ongoing as our line of severe storms continues to march off towards the east. We'll get to the latest here. We'll pause it. We'll hit our now time frame and show you where these warnings are right now. So we're now talking into areas of North Carolina and extreme eastern Tennessee. You can see this is our tornado warning that we've got near the Benton community. This is Cleveland, right along 75 as you're heading through the mountainous terrain there in the Smoky Mountains. This tornado warning goes until midnight, so we've got another 8 minutes or so on this as these storms, this is being indicated at 48 mile per hour movement, but these have been moving much faster at times to the north and east around 60. So this is a very dangerous storm heading off to the north and the east. This is all going to be north of McKaysville, heading towards Etowah and Athens eventually as this storm continues to track very rapidly north and east. This is the same storm that we were tracking through North Georgia. It's had a history of rotation, and it's been a very kind of messy storm in the fact that we've had just so much rain around it. This is a wall of water coming in, and on top of that, you've got a lot of lightning, and you've got maybe some hail in here as well, strong winds. It's just a messy storm. It's not a clear-cut, like singular thunderstorm. So this is going to be a messy setup as we continue to advance off to the northeast. Let's look at the reflectivity on this. And see what we're dealing with in terms of, or the velocity, I'm sorry, to see actually where those winds are right now within the storm and what kind of signature we're dealing with. So let's go here, check out our base velocity, we'll let it load. And now here's the deal, we're getting a little further away from the radar site because we are now getting an angle probably 20, 30,000 feet in the atmosphere. We'll go 20,000 on that as the radar site's far away. So we're getting a read that's much higher up in the clouds, but that is still a very good signature despite how far away it is for perhaps some rotation right in this area. That's just north and east of Cleveland, east of Hopewell, getting over here towards the Benton community. So here's where our dangerous part of the cell is. And again, if you're in the Benton area or Charleston, you need to be on high alert as the storm continues to roll east and a little bit north. So that's our dangerous storm. As you get into areas of eastern Tennessee, here's North Carolina right here, right on the border there as we're getting up towards the Knoxville area. I think these storms will pass south of you, but certainly something we need to keep an eye on through the rest of the overnight here. Elsewhere down to the south, we're continuing to see this line of heavy showers and thunderstorms push east across areas of North Georgia. We've had numerous tornado warnings for the Dalton area up towards Chattanooga. We've got another round coming in here. This one is just crossing the state line from Alabama into North Georgia, a little bit further south than that last storm was, but the town of Somerville impacted by this one, Menlo, Treon, and Lyerly, which is down to the south, all need to be in a safe place with this storm. This is extreme northwestern Georgia, and again, this is your probably second tornado warning in this general vicinity in the last hour as these storms continue to track over the same area. So let's look at the velocity on this one to see what kind of rotation we're working with. This one's had a history as well of some damaging winds and probably is producing some damaging winds right now as this moves off to the east. So this is along the squall line, right? So we've got that squall line that's kind of moving in, and you can see, look at the wind change here. We've got very, very strong winds coming in as this line pushes in, but it's these little kinks that you see. See how it kind of bends in these little ebbs and flows that you see? That indicates as this thing kind of pushes off to the east, you get these little spin-ups along it, and some of them have the abilities to sustain themselves, as we've seen with this storm. But a pretty nasty looking storm heading in. The good news is it is starting to kind of flatten out with the last couple radar scans there. And you can see the Weather Service kind of shrinking that warning as that little area near Somerville is really the only area of concern, whereas before it was a much larger area. So hopefully we're getting some bowing out there, likely damaging winds, but I hope we're losing that tornado threat on the go forward without that. So that's kind of what we're seeing with that storm. And let's look now down further to the south. We've got more tornado warnings that have been popping. We had one actually in South Carolina earlier on this evening. Pretty dangerous storm over there. So why don't we check on South Carolina to see what we've got going on with that storm. This is out ahead of the main line. The main line's still back in Alabama, where we've had numerous tornado reports. So here's what we have going on in South Carolina. We've had a couple just these rogue cells. These are supercellular in nature, so they're very capable of spinning up tornadoes. But again, that's the storm that was tornado warned there, heading just east of the Greenville community, eventually up towards 85, Spartanburg in the path of that storm. But the good news is that one not even severe anymore, as that rotation has kind of gone away within that storm here in the last couple scans. All right, so what we're going to do is go back to Alabama, where the bulk of our severe weather has been over the course of the last 2 hours or so. So we're going to go back to this radar site here in Birmingham, and we'll take a look at what we've got going on. So right now, we don't have any tornado warnings in Alabama outside of this Fort Payne storm, which is heading into North Georgia. So that's some great news. These are still some rough storms producing very heavy rainfall from Birmingham off towards the east up towards Gadsden. But the good news is not severe right now. Lots of lightning, very heavy rain, likely some localized flooding issues with that, but most of that is going to head off to the east. In Birmingham, you actually get a break after a very busy day. Down towards Montgomery, though, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. If you remember what's happened today so far, we've seen very little in terms of activity for areas of southeastern Alabama, even south central Georgia. And so this air mass is untapped. We've still got plenty of flow out of the Gulf, and this whole area is really kind of primed still here, even despite the hour for severe weather. So I think this is where we're going to continue to really focus on over the course of the nighttime in terms of perhaps some severe thunderstorms and tornado development as well. So right now we don't have any of that. We have severe thunderstorm warnings, but no tornado warnings whatsoever. But look at the string of severe thunderstorm warnings right now, stretching from just south of Alexander City through the city of Montgomery right now. This is for damaging winds. And remember, we could get a quick spin up out of this as well. In fact, I would imagine we'll have one or two and go forward here over the next hour, as that just seems to be the environment that we're kind of setting up into. But the severe thunderstorm warnings stretch all the way back down towards Greenville, Monroeville, Atmore as well, as this line continues to advance out to the east. This is not the cold front, so once this moves through, you're not done, although I think this is pretty much going to rob the atmosphere of what's coming next. But look at this. We highlighted this earlier in terms of round number 3 is what we were calling it, back towards Arkansas at the time. Now that is heading into areas of Mississippi. So we've got a very fast-moving area of some showers and thunderstorms, and that is along the area of low pressure as it kind of swings in. Behind this, that's where we get the cold air. So this is really the last round. But if you joined us earlier on one of our videos, we were talking about how we thought this would be Memphis's round. You barely saw anything for the first couple rounds outside some heavy rainfall, but this we thought would be Memphis's chance for some severe weather. And ditto that for the Nashville area. I don't think your threat's over yet. I think as this low pressure comes in with some area of energy here, I think damaging winds will be the primary threat here overnight tonight. And we can definitely see that stretches from areas near Memphis down towards Tupelo. You can see this initial band that we have moving east. That is racing off to the north and east, likely 70 miles per hour or so, and that has some damaging winds with it as it does head east. Behind that, we've got kind of a decaying area of some rain and storms. Not too concerned about that. It's really this leading edge here. That is along that push of colder air heading into Tupelo that bears some watching. That line is still worn down to the south as you get down towards the Columbus, Mississippi area, eventually down into Winona. Meridian, you have been hit hard pretty much all day today. You're getting a break now. Most of this activity is going to slide to your north, but there's a pretty decent band of wind heading through Jackson right now as that colder air moves in. And that's something that we'll keep an eye on as we go throughout the evening. But boy, that is just going to be round 3 for you in areas of northeastern Mississippi and eventually back into Alabama again. So let's head back over towards Alabama. We'll go live radar now and go back down towards Montgomery because this is the area I think we really need to watch throughout the evening. But first, let's talk about our 2 tornado warnings we have out. I think that probably takes precedence to this. Although this is mountainous terrain up towards the Smoky Mountains, a little bit further off to the east, heading towards eventually the Knoxville community. This will be a little bit further south of you, it looks like, but who knows what's going to develop on the northern end of this. But again, if you're in Knoxville or Gatlinburg area, heading towards the Smoky Mountains, something that we need to keep an eye on as this storm has had a history of producing some damaging winds and a couple tornadoes. This whole line has throughout North Georgia. So that's going to be what we're contending with. I really hesitate to think how far north this is all going to get because we don't have as much instability. This system's still packing a punch, but we lack some of the instability that we've had further down to the south in terms of some tornado-making weather as you get up into areas of northern Tennessee and Virginia. But this air mass is changing. You have to keep that in mind because all this flow with this area low pressure is taking that humidity and pushing it off to the north. So that's why we have our severe weather threat for the Atlantic area, mid-Atlantic up towards the northeast. New York City has a severe weather threat tomorrow as a result of this. But we're just socked into heavy rain, Knoxville over towards Asheville. It's just a lot of heavy rain. We've got lightning as well. And embedded with that, you can see we've got more movement, a little bit more push to this storm coming out of the Chattanooga area. And that is the tornado-warned storm that we've had, just kind of a messy look to that with some very strong winds as that continues to ramp up. So Gatlinburg, maybe another 30, 45 minutes or so before this pushes in. Pretty fast movers tonight, though, so that's going to be a storm that we need to watch. The other issue is flooding. My goodness, these storms are putting down 1 to 2 inches of rain an hour, and we've got locations that have been under these storms for a long time. We've had multiple storms across areas of Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama as well, and we're talking 3 to 6 inches of rain in spots that have just gotten hammered left and right by these storms as they've kind of trained or gone over the same area. So flooding is going to be another issue for many of these locations overnight tonight. All right, let's head back down towards Alabama and take a look at these storms. Actually, I'm going to go into the Atlanta area and we're going to pull up this radar and take a look at these storms as they're moving in out of Alabama into Georgia. So pretty formidable line. Now, when you look at this, this is a reflectivity. You can't tell if a storm's severe or not based on reflectivity. All this shows us is the rain and how heavy it is, and if there's hail in there, how much is getting reflected back to the radar. Essentially, that's why we call it reflectivity. So you look at it, we've got a lot of red on there. There's some pinks in there as well. That tells you we've got a heck of a lot of rain falling, right? Perhaps some embedded hail, but it doesn't tell you if there's tornadoes or anything like that. That's when we have to look at our velocity radar, which you've heard of. Most of you probably know what that is. And that is when we can look into those storms and see what the wind is doing inside. And the wind has been doing squirrely things all evening long because we've got a setup across the atmosphere for severe weather in terms of a lot of lift. We've got a lot of shear, so that wind churns with height. It doesn't always. Sometimes it lines up, and thunderstorms will be perfectly fine without creating tornadoes. But we have a very high shear environment and a very high instability environment too across the southeast, and that's the reason for this. So all the storms, as they grow up into the atmosphere, are basically churning. They're all rotating, and storms rotate all the time. That's not the problem, but a lot of these get rooted down to the surface and they can rotate enough to create these tornadoes. So that's why we need to look at our velocity radar quite often because things have been changing very quickly and things are moving very quickly, but the threat is there for all these storms to rotate tonight. So That's what we're seeing here. We've had a couple tornado warnings already with this storm off toward the south and the west. It has now crossed over the Alabama state line, now heading into northwestern parts of Georgia. Somerville, you're under that tornado warning now. And we're getting a little far away from the radar site, so it's kind of hard to see where that rotation is, but I'll try to pull it back up again. This is that main push. It's kind of a linear in nature, so we get these little like ebbs and flows that we're looking for, and there's definitely been a little notch in there as it's heading into the Somerville area. That's that one that's gotten a little bit smaller, but still a storm, dangerous storm, and that'll be eventually heading towards I-75 as you're heading up towards North Georgia through the mountains there. Down to the south, boy, a couple other areas to watch near Anniston, Alabama, heading towards Tallapoosa. You can see this little area of bright green there. A couple little notches we need to keep an eye on with that as well as that pushes off to the east. So more storms to watch throughout the evening. Let's pull up the Birmingham radar now and go into some of these details in terms of what the winds are doing for these storms that stretch down towards Montgomery. These are not tornado-warned storms. These are all severe thunderstorm-warned storms. But boy, that's getting kind of messy. This is going past the radar site. That's why you have the change of color. I know it looks kind of ominous, but what we would be watching is this area right here to see if we have maybe a little notch in that. I don't see one. I do see a damaging wind threat with this, but I do not see anything that would be indicative of tornado threat. And then more damaging winds perhaps down towards Montgomery, the reason for that warning right now. But I don't see anything as of right now that would indicate that we'd have a tornado here in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. Further down to the south, there are more severe thunderstorm warnings. This gets down towards the Jackson, Alabama area. And you can see just north of the Mobile area, we're seeing some pretty decent winds with those storms as well. That is as to be expected, as this whole entire line is capable of producing some damaging winds. And you can see all the severe thunderstorm warnings we have. Nothing too weird there. A couple little notches we're watching with some of those stronger pockets of winds, but nothing that would indicate any of those would have a tornado warning here in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So that's some good news. This is where we also have some problems in terms of strong winds. This is that third push that we have coming in with the area low pressure. We've had an initial line that's heading through Ripley and Tupelo, Mississippi right now. That has had some very strong winds with it. It looks like it's starting to maybe fan out a little bit, which is some good news because that would indicate that perhaps that energy is getting stretched a little bit. So hopefully that's the case. But still, this has a lot of wind energy with it. The jet stream whipping right through here. We've got a jet streak or a real strong push of wind at the jet level moving through this, and that's really what sustained this line over the course of the evening, and it will continue to sustain that line. Nashville, we'll have to keep an eye on this one. This was Memphis' shot at severe weather. We had a severe thunderstorm warning there, but for Nashville, you haven't had a whole lot other than some rain today, lots of thunder and lightning, especially southern areas of Tennessee. But this is what we're going to have to watch in the Nashville area as we go over about an hour and a half or so is this fast-moving line of storms. We'll have to see how it further develops off to the north, but right now the bulk of that energy is with this fastest-moving part that will eventually head into northern Alabama and then eventually the Nashville area. So we'll see how that develops. I still think you have a severe shot with that later on this evening. But our two tornado warnings right now, we've got two of them. They are in areas of extreme eastern Tennessee, heading up towards the Knoxville area eventually. This is towards Cleveland, Tennessee, and then one in the North Georgia mountains right now, which is really one of like three that you've had passing through that area. All the purple areas with the red outline, those are our severe thunderstorm warnings. We've got plenty of those. Most of those are for damaging winds, but we have to keep an eye on each and every one of those as we could have a quick spin-up tornado along those, especially I think the highest risk here the rest of the overnight here, at least over the next hour or two, will be for southern areas of Alabama and eventually heading into areas of southwestern Georgia and northern Florida. That's where we're going to have to keep an eye. North Carolina, you've got a new severe thunderstorm warning. This is for a cell that was heading out of South Carolina. We can pull up the radar here and take a look at that. And that is for damaging winds and perhaps some hail with that as well. So that's going to be a cell that we have to watch throughout the evening as that is a little bit out ahead of the main action. Most of that you notice was way back towards the West Knoxville getting soaked right now. But you have to keep an eye on some of these because they can kind of live on their own. They don't really rely on anything else than themselves, kind of like an in-law maybe. But you can see some of them have a chance of rotating because they're not being influenced by this main line. So that seems to be the case. We've got a severe thunderstorm with perhaps some hail, some damaging winds, but we'll have to keep an eye on those. Those get a little squirrely sometimes as well. Let's look at the big picture across the country, and then we'll get back into the details of where these warnings are. But I want to pull up, let's turn this radar off. We'll go back to more of a national radar. And what I want to show you is kind of the big picture in terms of where we're going from here. So this whole entire system is being driven by a powerful area of low pressure, which is kind of elongated. It's not a real compact area of low pressure, which in my mind kind of saved us a little bit. I know we had a lot of tornadic activity, obviously several tornadoes reported already, lots of wind damage, but this is an elongated area of low pressure, whereas if it were more compact, I think we'd have even more energy with it, especially south and east of that low. So I think it could have been worse. I really do, in terms of that setup. But still, it's a very strong area of low pressure. We are seeing a little bit of an energy transfer with that as well, whereas the low was deepest down towards the south and is starting to transfer up towards the Great Lakes. You can see that growing area of low pressure that we have near Chicago. But what you're looking at here, these are all isobars. So these are lines of equal pressure. Bottom line, when they get close together, you have a tight pressure gradient and a lot of wind. So this is a wind machine. So if you're joining me and you're not in the southeastern half of the United States, you're probably still getting impacted by the storm if you're in the eastern half of the country, either by wind or perhaps some snow. But you can see we've got the strong southerly flow on the north side, so we've got gusty winds out ahead of it, blowing warm air from our Gulf of Mexico region all the way up in the northeastern United States. And then on the backside, we're dealing with a very cold wind, bringing that air down from Canada. And the difference with this is, my goodness, look at the temperature difference. I'll plot that on here. Look at the temperature drop that we have coming in on the back side of this. We'll plot some numbers on here as well. But it is sharply colder across areas of the Great Plains. Remember, we had severe weather earlier just southeast of Dallas. You're now at 48 degrees. And this is 20-degree air, teens even coming down to the Rockies. I mean, this is record cold for many locations across the Intermountain West. And it's that air mass that's punching into our warmth and humidity. We're still in the mid-70s, even upper 70s across Georgia and areas of the Florida Panhandle. It's that battle zone that is causing these severe storms and this low pressure to ramp up. So we've got a much cooler pattern ahead. After these storms head through, we've got much colder air that's going to sink in, and that's going to kind of stick around. We're going to be dealing with a much cooler week across the eastern half of the country. I know a lot of spring lovers don't like that, but the good news about that is the fact that it's going to kind of put a damper on our severe weather threats over the course of the week. Whenever you have cooler, stable air, you don't tap into the Gulf of Mexico like we certainly are doing here this evening. So back to our severe thunderstorm area. This air mass, as I mentioned, is just ripe for severe weather. And it's all about the wind flow and the temperatures as well. But you can see that flow out ahead of it coming out of the southeast. It's bringing in moisture-laden air. And just copious amounts of moisture are available for these storms. And you can see on the backside, we've got a wind out of the northwest across Arkansas. That is a cooling wind. That's a more stable wind as well. It's when that punches into this warm, humid air that we have the problems, and where all that air kind of meets up, it goes up, it lifts up in the atmosphere, and that's why we have our line of showers and severe thunderstorms as well. So that's kind of the big setup that's kind of driving all this. And we've had some gusty winds out ahead of it as well. On the order of 20, 30, even a couple 40-mile-per-hour gusts. You can see southern areas of Alabama with some 40-mile-per-hour winds. So this is a very, very fast moisture transport coming out of the Gulf and even the Atlantic at this point on the go forward, just helping to fuel these storms. One of the other factors we look at is dew point. This measures basically how sticky it feels outside, whether it's humid or whether it's dry. And you need dew points that are in the 60s. 70 helps to support severe weather, but definitely into the 60s, and we certainly have that. Atlanta earlier today in areas of North Georgia started with dew points in the 40s. It was dry, it was cool, there was hardly any humidity around, and boy did that change. A warm front lifted off to the north. If you're joining me from Georgia, holy moly, you know that change that I'm talking about. We went from 40-degree dew points, North Georgia, up to near 70 now in spots. And it is thick outside. It's got that just heavy feeling to the atmosphere, and that's what's fueling a lot of these storms. Meanwhile, things have changed kind of the opposite way. Back towards Birmingham, you're still humid, but that change is coming in with that change of wind direction as well. So areas of Mississippi that have had the severe weather, that have had the tornadoes, we now have dew points dropping into the 50s. So that is a much cooler air mass that's heading in a much drier air mass as well. And that's why we're kind of stabilizing out. You can see we've dried things out across Arkansas, areas of Louisiana we've dried out because we've got drier, cooler air moving in, and those cooler temperatures as well. Temperatures down into the 40s in Arkansas. We've got that battle zone right now in Mississippi where we have that kind of last push of storms. And that's going from near 70-degree temperatures right back into the 50s in the western side. This is why I don't think your threat's over in Nashville because we've got temperatures in the mid-60s right now. That's just fine. Dew points are up there in the low 60s. I think once you get north of town, up into Kentucky, that's where we really start to lose our risk. I think damaging winds would be a primary threat, but again, I think these storms may clip the Nashville area before they head off to the north and east. And you can see the atmosphere as we get over towards North Carolina is becoming more humid by the hour. So this will set the stage for severe weather tonight and tomorrow as well. So that's kind of the setup that we're dealing with here on the go forward. We'll go back to our high-res radar here and pull that up. And let's get in and look at some of these storms. So here's the overall look right now to what we're dealing with in terms of warnings. And I can turn watches on too. You probably know if you're under a severe thunderstorm watch or a severe thunderstorm warning, but regardless, these are the areas that we're dealing with in terms of severe thunderstorm warnings. I see one tornado warning now. That is that one that we were tracking, areas of eastern Tennessee. Here are your watches. So tornado watch is still out for areas of southern Alabama. That extends into areas of Georgia that have not seen much of anything yet. And these go through the early morning hours, 7 a.m., folks. We're talking 12:18 Eastern time right now. So we've got a ways to go. I would imagine they'll start trimming this back, not after this line moves through, but I think after this line back in Mississippi moves through. Once that heads through, I think you'll be in the clear in terms of severe weather because we talked about that more stable air that'll be moving in. But these tornado watches go through early Monday morning, and they extend up towards where we're seeing some of the tornadic activity up in areas of eastern Tennessee. Off to the west, we've got severe thunderstorm watches, which are still out for that final line moving through areas of Mississippi and western Tennessee. We'll see if they extend that out towards the east, and then you can see this all extends further east into areas, or further south into areas of the Florida Panhandle. More than likely, this is going to be our threat area as we go through the overnight. I'm not too sure how well this secondary line holds together once it gets into Alabama, because that air is pretty well tapped right now after some really rough action here over the last couple hours. So something we'll have to keep an eye on, but I think our focus shifts towards southeastern Alabama and areas of western Georgia here over the next couple hours. So that's what we're dealing on the watch front. We'll turn the watches off now, go back to our warnings, and let's get our radar on. It sounds like a meteorology term. Let's get our radar on, but here we go. Let's dive into these storms now. All right, so we've got heavy rain still moving through North Georgia mountains, likely some flooding with this as it continues off to the east. This whole entire line kind of is. But you can see we get a general rainfall, rain moving into Atlanta now. Pretty decent rate right now. We can call that moderate rain, heavy rain north of town. But you get the rain for a while, and then all of a sudden you get this line or this push of severe storms, and it really comes down. You get some very strong winds with that, and that's where we've seen these embedded spin-ups within that line. which is now in areas of eastern Alabama, heading through North Georgia again. We've had multiple spin-ups with that system heading into areas of eastern Tennessee, eventually into North Carolina as well. But this is really the area to watch. Further down to the south, nothing severe east of Birmingham right now, along 20, but just south of there, that's where we do have some warnings near the Alexander City area. You can see how it kind of bypasses 20 there. We've got some warnings here for the damaging winds with this line. We get a little break, and then we've got more severe thunderstorm warnings down to the south. So these are all of our warnings right now. These watch boxes you see in the red, that includes Alexander City. We're now getting into the Auburn area, areas of Lee County, Montgomery. You've got your warning for just a little bit longer. I think the worst is just east of you right now. But this is a line that we really need to watch over the course of the next hour, as we could have some spin-ups along this line. I really think we'll have at least one or two, the way things have been structured this evening. And there's a decent push of energy into this as well via the jet stream that just continues to howl over this area. So it doesn't take a whole lot for these storms to tap into that jet stream energy and bring it down to the surface. Let's go a little bit further south, take a look at what the Florida Panhandle is dealing with right now. You can see we've got that line that extends down through South Alabama, and that line is really packing a punch here. My radar is not loading in South Alabama, so maybe we won't take a look at that. Maybe we'll switch to a little Florida action, see what we have going on. There we go. So our squall line extends all the way down to the Gulf Coast. This is really where it starts. So your storms that we're going to be getting in the Columbus area, Eufaula area, they're actually going to come from this activity down by Troy and in areas of southern Alabama. So that's what we have to watch as this kind of fire hose continues. But still, these storms, you got to watch them even off the Gulf Coast. They can produce some spin-ups out over the ocean. We can watch those come into the Florida Panhandle. So Pensacola, areas along I-10, going to be under the gun here between Mobile and Panama City here over the next hour or so. And then off to the north, these storms much more formidable up towards Montgomery. Lots of heavy rain with that. And it's this leading edge that we're concerned with in terms of perhaps a spin-up tornado or so. The Columbus area, you can see we've got some rain in town right now. That's mainly just off to your north is where we're seeing the bulk of that. The thunderstorm activity continues to roll in, though, to areas just east of Montgomery. Montgomery getting hit pretty hard right now. This is all along 85. Tuskegee right now seeing some strong winds as this pushes in. It's just a general rainfall as you get up towards areas of Chambers County, LaGrange seeing a general rainfall, but we still have to watch this back half here with these embedded cells. You see them kind of in that linear form. Those are the ones that we need to keep an eye on as this moves into Georgia from Alabama. Let's look real quick. What I want to pull up is, let's look at velocity real quick. And then I want to pull up some rainfall to see how much rain we've been talking here across much of Alabama. I'm sure we've got some flooding issues. I don't see any flash flood warnings, though. That's the good news. I know we had them earlier for areas of Mississippi, but I'm pretty sure we've seen 2 to 3 inches of rain in many spots. So here's our push of wind with our severe thunderstorm warnings. Kind of a weird-looking cell there just north of Alexander City. It looks like just a push of wind. With that, doesn't look to be rotating. This is getting interesting, heading into Wetumpka, eventually Tuskegee. You see this bright area of green. That's got a pretty decent speed to it, so we'll see what happens with that. We'll have to watch real closely to make sure that doesn't spin anything up heading into Tuskegee. Further down to the south, what we'll be watching for here are just those little ebbs and flows within those little notches that may develop. That seems to be the primary threat right now with that, but you can see how this kind of bows out. It looks like everything kind of bowing out towards the cell that's heading towards Tuskegee, and that's just not too pretty to look at. So we'll see what happens with that one as that advances off to the east. All right, let's go back to, I want to look at rainfall real quick here. And see what we've been dealing with in terms of how much rain. I know a lot of these storms, boy, 2 to 4 inches of rain with a lot of these earlier. in portions of Mississippi. And a lot of these storms put down 1 to 2 inches of rain an hour. I mean, it was really coming down across all these thunderstorms, all the areas that are seeing these storms. All right, let's pull this up here. We'll look at storm total here. I hope this works, and if not, there we go. Yeah, that doesn't seem to want to load either. There we go. Okay, it does load. Yeah, so look at some of these areas. Let's see how much we're talking. Yeah, 3 to 4 inches of rain. And this is just a small sample size. There are areas I'm sure that have seen more, as Doppler radar indicated, off towards the west. But we've got more rain coming in. So flooding may be an issue. I know that's not our main threat. That's not the biggest thing we're worried about tonight. But that's just something to kind of layer on in terms of one of the threats that we have. All right, so we have, looks like a brand new tornado warning now for areas of southern Alabama. Our North Georgia storms still packing a punch as well. Oh no, that's outdated. I'm sorry, that had already happened. So we're just talking, that's good news. That's great. Areas of eastern Tennessee, you can see we've got still that tornado warning, which is shrunk in coverage a little bit. That's some good news, but that seems to be our dangerous storm up there. All right, so we do not have tornado warnings across Alabama. We did, though, as these storms were moving in from the west, but right now we're just dealing with severe thunderstorm warnings. Pretty heavy wall of water, though, getting ready to head into Union Springs. Again, we're going to watch this as you quick get these little notches in there, quick little spin-ups. As this line continues to push, you get a lot of air pushing that line off to the east, and we could see some issues with that. So heads up Auburn, over towards Columbus, down towards Eufaula as well. I'm sure you already have a heads up there because you know your severe weather days, and today is one of them. And you certainly haven't seen much of anything yet today. It is just warm and sticky and breezy, and temperatures in the upper 70s right now, despite the hour, and that is certainly going to fuel some of these storms. There's a lot of lightning with these as well, so you certainly see these coming in from the west, anywhere across areas of western Georgia. North Georgia, we're still dealing with some very heavy rain. I would imagine there's some issues with flooding up in the North Georgia mountains. You get some of the terrain issues there where the water can really get going down some of those mountainous locations. So take it easy if you're in North Georgia. Atlanta, just a general rainfall right now. Let's keep it that way. I think the worst of the activity in Atlanta is going to move through here. Probably we've got the rain now. I would say we've got another half hour to an hour before some of this severe activity moves in. Still some warnings on that. And that is for damaging winds and perhaps a quick spin up, but we've also got a lot of heavy rainfall falling with that as well. Down to the south, that's where we have more of a threat, I think, for tornadoes. Is this area kind of untapped in the atmosphere, and it's moving through at a pretty weird hour right now. As we go through the 1, 2, 3 o'clock Eastern time hour, this will be rolling through Georgia. So we'll have to keep an eye on that for sure. And then further off to the north, this is where we lose some of the instability, but we still have plenty of wind energy with this. Plenty of shear, plenty of push from the jet stream. So areas of eastern Tennessee up towards Knoxville, we still have, believe it or not, a severe thunderstorm and tornado risk on the go forward. Despite the fact that you're kind of far removed from the main area of energy down to the south. So that threat extends up there. And all of this threat is going to make its way all the way up into the eastern seaboard, up the mid-Atlantic, as we go into your Monday. This is going to be a fast-moving system as it really starts to ramp up across the eastern half of the country. Other things we're dealing with here tonight, we've got a lot of wind energy with this system, mainly off to the north. We'll pull up the... let me see here. This is what happens when you have too many things to choose from. This is a windy system for those not dealing with the severe weather. Let's go back to our national radar again. There we go. All right, so kind of the bigger picture here. You can see all of these isobars. This is our area of low pressure. It is just ramping up as it heads up towards the Ohio Valley. But we're dealing with wind across the northeast. That severe threat, though, you can see with this southerly wind that we have, will pull some of this humidity and instability up into the Carolinas overnight tonight. Virginia up towards the I-95 corridor. As you get towards D.C., even as far north as New York City, we've got a severe threat tomorrow as this system continues to kind of pull that same air mass that's down to the south up the eastern seaboard. On the back side of it, we've got quite the different story. We've got a lot of wind to deal with, but it is turning much colder from Minneapolis down towards Des Moines, Kansas City. It is really, it's really coming down in terms of temperatures, and that's falling all the way down towards the Gulf Coast. So Arkansas, you went from severe weather earlier today to temperatures that are just crashing here this evening, and they will overnight tonight as well. So a pretty big system. That's really the breadth of it here is it's taken up much of the eastern half of the country, and the temperatures are coming down as a result. You can see some of the temps in the plains. Chicago, you're at 55 now, but you'll be down in the 30s here probably within a couple hours, and some of this 20 and even temperatures in the teens in the Rockies. You've had a lot of snowpack out there as well. Certainly a different scene across that area as the system ramps up. All right, so let's give one final look at the radar here, and then we're going to take a little break and get some water to drink, and who knows what else. All right, let me see. All right, let's go back to our high-res radar again. We're going to take one final look at some of our storms heading through areas of eastern Alabama, North Georgia mountains, because those have been packing a punch in terms of some of the heavy rain and wind with those, lots of wind damage with those as they continue off to the east. All right, well, my radars aren't loading anymore, so perhaps the computer needs restarted. I'm not sure. I think I need to restart too. But here's the warnings right now. At least we have that. Again, North Georgia mountains, that's where we're seeing the primary threat right now for some damaging winds. We've lost that tornado warning. That's good news. Eastern areas of Tennessee. So all severe thunderstorm warnings right now. We're watching this heading into the Auburn area down towards Montgomery, eventually Columbus, Georgia. Severe thunderstorm warnings right now for damaging winds. And then there's a secondary area along the area of low pressure. This is where you get your temperature change back in eastern areas of Mississippi. So that is what we're seeing there. The good news is, hey, how about this? We don't have any tornado warnings right now, so we will keep it that way, right? All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. We'll pop back on here if there are any tornado warnings over the next hour or so to keep you guys safe. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Support us. We're about a week old here on the YouTube chain, but our goal is to keep you safe without hype. We're just keeping it real around here weather-wise. So we certainly appreciate your support, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.